think we're good to go. So I'm going to call to order this work session, which is going to speak to Parks Conduct Policy. And we have our Parks and Rec Director, Miss Ann Lane, who's going to begin.
All right. Thank you for your time again this evening, Mayor and Council. We'll be discussing the Parks and Recreation Patron Code of Conduct Policy. Patron Code of Conduct Policy outlines and defines behaviors that are deemed inappropriate and or unacceptable. A draft of the policy has been provided in your packet for this evening. The purpose of the Patron Code of Conduct Policy is to encourage behavior that supports the Parks and Recreation mission and values of serving and enhancing the lives of all members of the community. Parks and Recreation Department deems behavior unacceptable when it interferes with the Parks and Recreation mission, impinges on the rights of others, causes damage to facilities or equipment, or is dangerous to self or others. The Patron Code of Conduct indicates that the policy is enforceable at Parks and Recreation facilities. Those facilities include all park properties owned and managed by the City of Forest Grove, the Forest Grove Aquatic Center, and any area where a Forest Grove Parks and Recreation activity is taking place. For Parks and Recreation staff to enforce the Patron Code of Conduct Policy, the policy must be formally adopted with a resolution by the council. This is a necessary step so that the city's existing exclusion policy can be utilized if necessary. The Parks and Recreation Patron Code of Conduct Policy provides staff with a tool that can be used to ensure the safety of themselves and others. It provides clarity on what is considered unacceptable and or inappropriate behaviors, and it provides guidelines for a consistent staff response when working with difficult patrons. Coupled with the implementation of the Patron Code of Conduct Policy, a reporting and tracking system will be established and maintained by the department administrative staff. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Jesse, I guess, has the first question.
Just to maybe add a little bit, thank you, Ann. Just to maybe add a little bit, this is similar to the library's conduct policy. Library has a conduct policy as well that was adopted by resolution by the council. The purpose of tonight's work session was just to allow the council an opportunity to ask questions. We were going to schedule it for a resolution, I think, at the next city council meeting, notwithstanding this work session. So that's all I've got. Thank you, Mayor.
I have a question. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'll start with this question. So do we need to have patrons, like when I sign up for my library card, or like every so often you have to like sign up or renew, I think it's like 5 years, or like when I get a punch pass at the pool for my kid, like are we going to have people sign this, or do we need to even do that, or is it just like to sign sign that they've read it, and we don't really need to do that, do we?
No, but it will be posted in the facility.
And is it on our, is the library one on our website? And is
Yes, the
all of these
library
will
one
be-
is on our website. It's posted publicly as well. Mhm.
Cool. Oh, sorry, Council President.
So, thank you, Ann. Couple observations or questions. We had in number 11, we talk about smoking and chewing, those kinds of products, but I don't see anywhere that we are addressing alcoholic products or drugs of any kind. So I'm just curious as to whether or not those would also constitute behaviors that we don't want present, and we might want to consider adding those. The second comment I have to do with is the exclusion area on the next page. And we talk about the facilities, but I would also suggest that you put wording in there that includes the parking lots adjacent to those facilities. People might interpret that, well, I can't do these things in the aquatic center, but I can certainly do them out in the parking lot. And that's not acceptable either from my perspective. So you might want to include the parking. That gives you some more leeway too in terms of controlling what's going on around the facility.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Currently, can people, like if someone rents a space at Lincoln Park, like rents a shelter space to have a birthday party, right? Can people bring alcohol and drink on park? It's already like a no.
Alcohol is not permitted in city.
So, and that's a city property prohibition. So it's not just for parks, it's also for libraries, city hall, et cetera. So there's kind of a blanket there already for those types of, whether it's drugs or alcohol or tobacco.
Right, but I guess my point is if this is going to be posted, the alcohol one is buried somewhere in code, whereas this gets posted at the facility, and if you list the alcohol also in accordance with section such and such of the code, then you're addressing that as well. So if somebody's reading that, they know that that's not allowed either. A simple reference to an already existing code.
We could certainly include something like that in the public posting, for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know how I feel like, so can we, I don't, well, I could pull out my iPad but with are you saying that people shouldn't be allowed to smoke cigarettes in the parking lot of a city facility? I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I don't want to also shame people who like maybe have a vice that, like, I don't want to value base some things.
I hear what you're saying, but my thought was more around the loud noise, the behaviors, the bullying,
Yeah.
those kinds of engagement. I wasn't thinking of the smoking. I hear what you're saying.
Mhm.
You know, people can smoke out in the public but the other things there that are listed, I wouldn't want them going on in the parking lots either. Because kids can, somebody will get in an argument in the pool area and they'll just take it outside the parking lot. And that's where you end up, because it's not necessarily supervised or monitored, then quite honestly, that's where domestic violence starts. A lot of time is in those parking lots.
Mhm.
And that's what we need to, we ensure
to
that
prevent,
that doesn't
yeah.
happen. And so I don't know how you
Word it, but
how you cut the fine print in terms of, yeah, you can do it. You can't do anything in the parking lot but smoke.
well, I mean, the thing is, if the behavior policy, I mean, is it just maybe the keywords of like city property? Like you need to leave the city property. Like if you've been asked to leave the pool or this park, like you're asked to leave city property. I don't know. I'm
So-
trying to figure it out in my head right now.
Any parking lot that's within the boundaries of a park are considered park property.
Right.
So that would include the parking lot at the aquatic center. It's park property.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the policy? So do we have consensus for Anne to bring this as a resolution?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to adjourn this work session, and then I'm going to call our Community Development Director, Mr. Brian Pohl, up to talk about Tourism Event Sponsorship Program for our second work session. Hello.
Hello. It's fun to see yourself.
I know, I just don't look.
Try not to, actually. Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Brian Pohl, Community Development Director, City of Forest Grove, before you tonight on talk about some potential changes to the tourism sponsorship program. You've seen a lot of these before, but as we'll get to in the background, you all expressed a desire to have a work session. So here we are. We brought Resolution 2024-06 in front of you, which would have modified the guidelines existing tourism sponsorship program. Next slide. But by way of background, this program was originally funded. It's funded out of TLT at $40,000 for fiscal year 23-24. So far, the council has approved 6 applications that total $27,500. We do not see if all this money will be spent, although it possibly could. At the current program levels, this would allow us to fund about 8 to 13 events per year. And just a reminder that these applications are approved, they're reviewed by staff, approved by council. Obviously, they can be pulled as they have been before, but that is standard practice. Next slide. On October 23rd, we had a work session about the overall tourism program. On November 23rd, we had a council resolution that created the tourism sponsorship. And then staff, kind of seeing that the program could be oversubscribed, and there were some potential flaws with the program, brought back resolution 2024-06 that would have made some modifications to the existing tourism sponsorship. So just to kind of give you the background of what happened at that meeting, there was a motion to approve resolution 2024-06, made and seconded. And there was a motion, an amendment to the resolution was passed, which you had some discussion about. These changes would not take place or take effect until July 1st, 2024. I'm just going to read. Subsequent to the amendment's passage, a motion was passed to table resolution 2024-06 to May 28th, 2024, hold this work session. Now, with the purpose being to seek consensus on any changes in 2024-06 prior to that. Next slide. So there were 3 clarifications that were sought in 2024-06, and that was that you kind of conceptualize program sponsorship levels or event sponsorship levels. A lot of times you'll see events come, silver, bronze, platinum sponsorship levels. And so one thing that staff brought before you was that we would only award a sponsorship equal to or less than the maximum sponsorship level of the event. So if an event has a maximum sponsorship level of $3,000, we would sponsor that for $3,000. Additionally, if the maximum sponsorship level is $10,000, we would only go to a maximum of $5,000. And that was contained in 2020. Also contained in that resolution was that if an event lacks a sponsorship program, the most we would award for a non-sponsorship program event would be $2,000. And that's obviously in an effort to encourage organizations to develop a sponsorship. The lesson that we included in that was that the event organizer must produce marketing materials that include the city marketing materials. We realized this needed to be a requirement to assure that the event was marketed outside of Forest Grove. The city was recognized. Obviously, these are for tourism events. We want people to come in town. The other issues that were raised in that discussion was that the council expressed, or at least some members of the council expressed, the desire to see that that the distribution of funds throughout the community were kind of community-wide and not just for a couple of organizations, by either capping the amount a single organization can receive or limiting the number of times that one event can sponsor. Another question that was raised was, how does the program reward and restrict year-over-year events and spur new and innovative events? And currently, an organization can apply anytime during the year until the funds run out. The council also discussed having an application period, which we've taken up. Review and award those events. Kind of have it close off. Patience. Slide. The questions for council tonight, really in front of you, are: do we want to only award a sponsorship level or sponsorship equal to or less than the maximum sponsorship level of the event? Is council okay with the idea that if an event lacks a sponsorship program, we would cap that to $2,000 our participation? We want to make it a program requirement to produce marketing materials. City. We want to limit the amount of funding a single organization can receive in a fiscal year. We want to limit the number of times an event can receive funding. And we want to allow a rolling application or a certain open application period closure. So those are the questions that we are sort of putting forward for you tonight to allow for you to have discussion on. Next slide, please.
Okay,
And that's it.
so my proposal is that we go just not like, let's do number one and then say, everybody gets to say their opinion and I'll kind of keep tally of what we have for consensus and we'll just go through one and we'll do two. Does that work for everybody? Okay, so number one, only award a sponsorship equal to or less than the maximum sponsorship level of the event. I see thumbs up. I have a thumbs up too. So this is a yes. Okay, number two, if the event lacks a sponsorship program, cap the sponsorship to 2,000. I see 5 yeses and only one Dylan. So I'm going to say consensus is yes. Okay. Number three, make it a program requirement to produce marketing materials that include the city in them. Okay, we're rolling. Look at this group. And then number four, limit the amount of sponsorship funding a single organization can receive in a fiscal year. Dude, look at this consensus. What? You don't know about that? You're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I have 5
But go
thumbs
ahead.
up.
I know,
Okay,
I know. So
sorry.
just move, you know.
And then limit the number of times an event can receive funding. I don't know if we need to do that if we limit I'm going to say no on that. Because if you limit the amount of the sponsorship,
If it's a good event
Yeah.
that draws a lot of people, why
yeah.
limit it?
So I would say,
Yeah.
you have one yes, a no, a no, a no. And okay, so consensus is no.
For number 5, Mayor? Okay.
Well, and because of it, yeah. I mean, I know I don't want to speak for you, but your concern is people just depending on the funding and not, I know. I also think though that sometimes the opposite is true, is that community members depend on that event and it becomes like a destination. It becomes like a home, it becomes something.
I wouldn't want an organization to just automatically, oh, we're going to get 2,000 from the city. Oh, we don't have to worry about it. We're going to get at least 2,000. And so then it's not a decision by the council. They're more or less expected. And so
Yeah, city manager. Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about internally at staff is maybe after we have 2 or 3 years of applications under our belt and we get a better feel about what events are being done and what marketing is being done, is at that particular time maybe require some criteria commensurate with the application. Like, did they keep track of how many people came from, outside of town? Can we attach it to a vacancy rate for hotels or an occupancy rate? A little bit early in the program to do that now, but that might address that kind of number 5. But at this point, it's still so early in the program that we're just seeing how it might kind of work out. So
I think there's a lot of merit to that. That number 5 one is tied to outcomes,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's not just it's tied to outcomes.
I agree. Okay,
So we may not need to include it at
Correct.
this time.
we might revisit it. We will revisit it. That's
I
what I'm
think-
hearing is staff saying they're
yeah,
going to.
we'll revisit it. We need to get kind of a better sense of what events, what the money's going toward. Are they attracting folks? Are they not? And then we can start adding some kind of reporting requirements to it. But we'd kind of like to get a year or 2 under our belt to see just what we're getting in the door first.
Okay, and then, are we good with this discussion? Okay, so number 6,
Rolling application.
yeah, rolling application, I say yes to. Okay, we killed it.
Wow.
I would just like to say, good job, Kim. That was so fast.
You guys were so fast, I didn't get my notes complete on number 4. Can we just
Yeah.
revisit that one again? I
Okay,
wasn't
let's
sure.
go, because we want to now know the amount. So let's circle back to number 4, and it says limit the amount of sponsorship funding a single organization can receive in a fiscal year. So I want to make sure we all have, right now, the city has budgeted $40,000. So, I mean, I'm going to throw out a number, but I'm just going to throw out a number. Is it 10,000? That an organization, is that too much, too little? I don't know.
To help illuminate this a little bit, at the staff level, we had this conversation
Yeah, what did
about
staff
this
say?
very thing and the merits of it. I think this is probably one of the most big ones. by its very nature, a lot of these events will be held by the same organizations. Only so many organizations doing big tourism events. And so I don't know that we came to any conclusions on staff level, but, you know, limiting one organization to 1 or 2 a year might be in the sense that you probably have 2 or 3 organizations doing tourism. Maybe, I don't know, but we didn't come to a conclusion. That's just sort of everybody thinking discussion.
Yeah, I think you're completely accurate. What I think though as well is like, I'm just gonna throw out what I'm thinking, but like Pacific University, their football games, their home, like specifically homecoming, their home football games and graduation probably draw in the most revenue for TLT. So I think I'm not married to any sort of amount, but what I also want to make sure is if there's an organization that, I mean, you know, I think Council President Rippey said at the last meeting, like the Chamber and City Club sponsor the most events. And so he was like, these are the 2 organizations, which I agree, but I just want to make sure we keep capacity for if, you know, Valley Art with the Chalk Art or Pacific comes or any other organization comes and says, hey, we have this idea for this event. Like, you know, Pacific's going to do their first powwow, their first on May 4th. That's going to draw people and that's going to be huge for downtown business. And so I just want to make sure that we hold space for new projects, for like more overnight stays as we grow.
So we're talking about $40,000 a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough because there might be a year that nobody's really asking for it except for one organization, and other years that everybody wants to do an event, you know. So it's, unless we can block it off by quarter or something, I'm not really sure.
Well, yeah, this is a tough one because we asked them to develop a sponsorship program, and if they come up with a sponsorship program that says the platinum is $20,000 and then goes on down, and they're asking for $20,000, that's 50% of what we have. So I don't think that sort of shuts the door to several groups. And on the other hand, as Councilor Gustafson pointed out, if a organization is having 5 different events and they're asking for $2,000 each time, why should we limit it to just 2 or 3 events?
Right.
So
Isn't this about the money, like what we limit to for money? No,
should we limit it to money or to a percent? I mean,
I think money.
Just a clarification, even if somebody did have a sponsorship of, say, 20,000, it would still be a maximum of 5,000 per event.
okay.
Yeah.
So that would be, if the maximum is 5,000 per event, that means, and we did, so then maybe it's 15, so then it's 15, but I don't even know. This is a tough one.
So I think it goes back to kind of the idea that we're trying to generate here. What we're trying, I think, at least from my perspective, is what we're trying to do is generate a number of tourism events of a variety of nature to attract many different types of people here. So I don't, you know, if that is the intent of council, then can you leave it up to council to sort of regulate that that's actually happening and not a specific kind of event? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do know what you're trying to say, and I just think that I would feel more, I think policy, for me, like policy work is to create like enough, just like, you know, bookends, right? You want it to be flexible enough that people can work with it, but you also want to give direction and have some like safeguards, right? So that you know, the nonprofit knows like, look, I can, you know, there's 10,000, whatever it is, there's this much money that I can apply for and I have these events. Like, how do I want to kind of figure this out? Right. And that you're making sure that when, you know, new council come on and new organization, like people are constantly rotating. So I just think that there's like a sweet spot, like a Goldilocks bed. I just don't know.
maybe I like the rolling application idea, but if we had an application period, that would force all of the nonprofits to decide in advance, what are we doing for this year? And go ahead and apply. And so everything is, in this 1 month, we're gonna, the staff are gonna go through every single application, and that's when the decision will be made. You don't get your application in then, that's too bad for you. This is your application period. That way, all of the nonprofits get all of their applications in at once for the entire year, and staff can go through them.
I totally support that. Yeah,
The only,
better for us and for the organizations as well.
right. The only thing is when somebody decides last minute, I'm gonna have a, barbecue bake-off or whatever. It's just, you're not gonna get the support because you didn't think of it ahead of time, and that's just the way it is.
The only other, another drawback I see to that is if there's an organization trying to host an event from outside, and that other organization doesn't have their calendar set yet, and you can't apply during the application period for something that's not under your control. So that's kind of why I was looking at the rolling application.
I think
Because people have ideas throughout the year and find opportunities.
no, I think
I would rather go back to number 4 and say, let's just limit it to, at this point in time, to no more than 3 or 4,
wait, are we?
or dollar amount, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Let's decide that first. Do we want to do number? So I read number 4 to speak to how much funding, a dollar amount that an organization. But then when I'm listening to Council President Rippey, he's reading it as how many events can they apply for. So let's let's create our common language. Is number 4 staff? Were you thinking number 4 was a dollar amount or a number of events they could apply for?
Well, it's certainly up to you all. Obviously,
When you all
know
wrote
that.
this-
But when we were talking about this, it was probably a dollar amount that I think
Yeah.
we were talking.
So we're saying if that one single entity wants to do 20 events, they're only going to be able to get one set amount.
Yeah, like all accumulative. Like they can apply for as many events until they reach whatever the dollar amount is.
At a max of $5,000 per event.
Right, so they can do 5,000. So to me, I'm thinking, do we feel comfortable? So let's say everyone's a maximum at 5,000. That's 3 events. Like that'd be 15,000. Do we think 50? But then if that leaves really only, well, anyways, like the one side of it means that if 3 entities would do that, the whole thing would be out. I don't know if that would necessarily happen. Do we think that, I'm anywhere, I can't decide between 10.
You also have to think, how much is it actually going to take to put on an event? Like, what's the cost?
No, I
Each
don't
event's
know
going
that.
to be a different price.
Yeah, this is a marketing kind of
This
stuff,
is bigger than just putting this number on it. It's not necessarily going to be one size fits all, because there are going to be bigger events. There are going to be, you could have a multiple day event. To advertise for that is going to be more than it is for a 5-hour event on a weekend. We also have to think if a number of these things are going to be in better weather, so you're limited into a shorter amount of periods. We can get it's too many variables to it to actually narrow it down to that number.
I think we, so far in the existing program guidelines, let's say that you do have a multiple day event or something like that. I think it already says in the guidelines that an event is eligible for 1 sponsorship. So like if there's, at least correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I'm pretty sure that's what the existing guidelines say. And again, it's a sponsorship program. So in essence, we don't know necessarily what the nonprofit or the organization may use the monies for. We just know that we're sponsoring the event and we get some publicity out of that, and that they have to market it beyond Forest Grove. That makes sense. So
Is this something that if we wait a year or two to see and pay attention to what events are coming in on a regular basis and really start tracking that.
I think we can do both. I think we can plan ahead and anticipate and kind of set some guidelines to make sure we roll like, and then, but I also think just how we're gonna like review some of the other things that this is definitely a program that, I constantly tell them, we need to build in reviews. Look at the IJs, we need it. So I think that what you're saying is accurate, but I think we should also try to do our best to take a stab at it. I would be fine saying 15,000. I'd be anywhere between, for me, I'm comfortable with anywhere between 10,000 and 15,000. I'm trying to think of how many events in Forest Grove right now bring in tourism, right? Or like that can be, do you have, let's just go through it. Let's start with the fiscal year July, right? So there could potentially be an independent thing, but that didn't, well, anyways, that could potentially be one. Then you have either Uncork in August, and you have Chalk Art in September, and the Corn Roast. Okay, so that's 3. And then you have Oktoberfest, and you have Holiday in the Grove. So we're at 5. What else have you guys seen? Come on, staff, help me out.
So currently, the existing program will fund anywhere between 8 to 13 events, depending on if the sponsorship is 3,000 or up to 5,000. If the council caps it at 2,000, if they don't have a sponsorship, that number could go up to around 15 events likely, because not everyone is going to get $5,000. Some sponsorships will be $3,000, and if they don't have a sponsorship program, it'll be $2,000. So if the top 3 changes are made, we would anticipate that the program would fund anywhere from probably 13 to 17 events.
Just for reference, so far you've approved 6 events, and then you have 5 in the hopper right now. 3 of those are for this fiscal year. The other 2 that have been applied for are in July of 2024. So that would be, if you're just looking at what we've gotten so far, that's 9 total applications for this fiscal
And not all of
Started in
them
November,
are,
though.
And how many organizations have applied?
Oh.
Five different organizations. So I'm going to throw out a number. I'm proposing a $10,000 cap first year.
I would
Because-
throw out 12.
Okay.
And then I'd also, for the number of times, I'd say 3.
Is that for number 5?
Yeah.
Okay. We said no for number 5 though.
Yeah, we
Just
went
for
into
the-
number 5.
We said that there wasn't going to be a limit because we're
Oh,
going to
okay.
limit the amount.
That's right. Everybody else, I was the only one. that
Yeah,
voted.
sorry, I wrote down our consensus things.
Okay.
I got you on that one. Okay, so you hear a number, let's discuss. I said 10,000, Council President Ruby said 12. What other members?
I would say 15, but I think that whoever is having the events should be able to come to the council and ask for more exception. So, I mean, things automatically go through, and then if there's something that's really a great idea and they've already done their 3 events,
We're not doing the number of events.
well, but if you do
Price.
$5,000 per, that's going to hit your 15,
So if
you
they've
know.
spent their allotted.
Yeah. I'm just afraid that we're gonna put people in too much of a shoebox, and then we're gonna have a great idea, and it's gonna be, 2 of the organizations in Forest Grove that aren't going to be able to have it because they've already blown their wad, and it's really helpful to have that money for the events.
Yeah, and I'm afraid on the opposite end, that we're gonna let a couple organizations are gonna, use it, and then someone new or someone else.
That's why I said
Mhm.
12,000. That's
Yeah.
10, 15.
Yeah, are we
I'll
fine
say
with
10.
10? What are you saying?
I would honestly, I would go with 12, but I also like what Donna's saying. If they needed more funds, they could come to us and ask for those funds to be done, because there is those events. I mean, as many as these events are bringing in things, I'm looking at like this high school basketball state tournament brought in more than these things are bringing in as far as
We're trying to
tourism.
get the pickleball tournament going
Mhm.
here,
Yeah,
too, which
like
is,
things like that. Like
Yeah,
you know,
but you wanna,
but
like,
I think if they need more money later on down the line, it doesn't. I mean, just because an organization has done a couple of events but has a great idea that's going to limit what they can do, we shouldn't limit them for having great ideas. Who cares if they're the ones that keep putting on events that bring more people in? I don't care if that same big organization.
I'll
keeps
go with
doing it and doing
15.
it.
So you got 3 of us so far.
I think 15's too much because at 15, if I'm just gonna say, like, what if you have the same two groups that have the 15, and then that leaves, so that's 30,000. That leaves $10,000 for everyone else.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at getting the program started, and you guys can adjust it next year.
I know. I think that, like, so I would feel better like this. As a fiscal conservative, I would feel better, and I would compromise and say 12. Like, as someone who's conservative, it's like, why don't you make sure? And then we can say, if in May, if we have more money, like, hey, we have this extra funding, like, come do whatever. But I would like to make sure it's equitable and accessible to the most people and the most different projects than saying, like, hey, we have these things, and then we're only going to be able to fund 6 projects. Like, and then someone else, I mean, if you did it that way, it's 6, there's 8 projects, right? Like, I don't know. I'm good with 12.
Right, I'll go
12.
with 12.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm good
12.
with that.
12 with an exception?
Well, I don't know, like, let's revisit. I think we do a year and then see what, I don't want to make an exception before we know we need to make an exception. And I don't want people to think, like, because here's the deal, it's like, I don't know if you guys get this out and about in the community, but it's like, I mean, I hear a lot that, like, the city should be funding different things. The
City should be funding
this.
everything.
And so, like, for me, I don't want
Who wants
to,
things
like, we
free?
create policies so we don't have to pick and choose which thing we're, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, I just would rather have a policy that I can say, hey, this was the policy, right? And I definitely think we should revisit after a year. We'll know more.
Oh, yes. We'll have more experience with this, so absolutely.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
My notes are done now, so no more,
know, everybody's-
more decisions can be made.
Okay. I'm adjourning this work session.
Thank you all.
Oh, my goodness.
Almost done until you reopen.
I know.